really pleased today to introduce our speaker. He represents a number of things. One is he's a damn good writer. And when he talks about something, we get a full picture of what was happening. He chooses details to discuss, details that engage you rather than bore you. You're not there saying, "Oh, get to the damn point." You're saying, "Oh, this is right. He remembers this too. Oh, wow!" And he's from, of course, he represents emigration from Italy to the United States, and a relatively recent emigration, and he represents the emigration to a town that is really famous. Highwood, Illinois is a unique place, and when I speak of it, the first thing that comes to my mind is they kept the language better than any of the other Italian communities. And also that they continue to be strong, and they've got some great bocce courts up there. And they've got this Modenese Society, Mutuo Soccorso, that is running pretty strong, and they have a net worth of a couple $100,000, and there are not very many Italian organizations that have that kind of net worth. Of course, they're an insurance organization, so they've got to pay that to people when they die. Anyhow, Nino Lamberti has written a number of articles in the Franoi, and he's with pictures and with information. Some of it overlaps with what's in the book. But now we have a chance to, with the publication of the book, to put the whole story together. And today, as I look around the room, here, the intensity of your commitment to Italian American studies is impressive to me, and so I think we've assembled a special audience for Nino, and I'd like to welcome him and to hear about the story of his book. And I can't remember how many thousand miles it is, but it's 4,630 miles traveled, and that's a lot. Nino Lamberti.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Okay, Nino.
Dominic, thank you. Thank you, Casa Italia, for this wonderful opportunity. Much appreciated to talk about the book. But before I get into that, I want to formally introduce my sister, Eleonora Piandelagotti. She's with me today. She was part of the travel, so she has a unique perspective as well. And you know what? Next week is her birthday.
Oh.
So why don't we say happy early birthday, Eleonora? Happy birthday. We won't sing, right? We won't sing. Buon compleanno a te, buon compleanno Eleonora, buon compleanno a te.
Grazie per la canzone perché è il mio ultimo compleanno.
Don't say that. Don't say that. Well, here we go. Let me explain my name a little bit. My birth name was Maurizio, and the book is under Maurizio Lamberti. But when I was in college, I received the nickname Nino because back at that time, many moons moons ago, there was an Italian championship middleweight fighter named Nino Benvenuti. And I always made it a point to find a television when he was boxing. And so people started calling me Nino. So I don't care. Maurizio, Nino, doesn't matter. So again, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Let me ask a question. How many immigrants in the room, first generation, second generation? See, I knew I liked being here. I knew I liked all of you. So as an Italian American, I feel very, very lucky to have one foot firmly planted in the American culture and one foot firmly planted in the Italian culture. Very, very grateful that I've experienced the opportunities that America afforded me, but equally as grateful for the experiences of the beauty of Italy and the Italian culture and my heritage. And I owe it all to Franco and Giovanna Lamberti, who in 1955, my dad was 35 years old, my mom was 34. They made the difficult decision to leave Italy. Everyone that they knew, everything that they knew, they left. They made that difficult decision, and then they made the arduous journey, 4,630 miles from a small town up in the Apennine Mountains called Piandelagotti. It's in the Modena region, in Emilia-Romagna, and it was a farming town. So that morning, a very chilly morning in late November of 1955, as a family, we walked out of our house, which is right uptown, to the bus. The bus was going to go to Pisa. That was the first leg, 79 miles, or I could be exact. 70 miles from Piandelagotti to Pisa. Down the curves of the mountains, we reach Pisa, we transfer to another bus, 87 miles to Genoa. Genoa, we boarded the Andrea Doria, the boat that sank 6 months after we got here, and we took it to New York. That's 3,655 nautical miles. And then from New York, we took a train to Chicago, an additional 790 miles, where my aunt and uncle, my dad's sister and husband, were waiting and took us to Highwood, Illinois, which is 28 miles north of Chicago. So that morning, my father, with 2 suitcases in hand, followed by my mom and my sister and I, hopped on that bus. And the first thing that happened on the first leg was the suitcase broke. The buckle of the suitcase broke. And he took off his belt, wrapped it around the suitcase, and that's how it traveled all the way to Highwood when we threw it away. And in preceding us, my dad had built a chest, a wooden chest, 2 feet by 4 feet, 2 feet deep. Everything that they owned went in that chest, and that went before us. And that wooden chest now is in my office, and I look at it, I go, really? Everything that you owned with 2 little kids traveling all that distance? It's not like getting on O'Hare and taking a plane to Rome and there you are, boom, 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 boom. All that distance. And because of this book is a love story to them. I owe it all to him. My sister owes it all to him. It's also a love story for my son. 8 months before he died of brain cancer, he asked me to write about the Lamberti story. the immigration story. Christopher earned a PhD from Brown University in American Studies. He was a historian. He loved history, and he loved our history, the Lamberti history. And for the years he was down here, he would just interview his grandparents about the trip, their feelings, what happened here, what happened there. He videotaped them. And so I have those videotapes. Obviously, I have personal experience of taking this trip, what I remember. And of course, all the years that I was with my mom and dad, I quizzed them as well. All of that has found its way into the book. So I'm going to take the book in parts and talk first about Piandelagotti, the city, and then the assimilation, because you can't do the immigration without the assimilation. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Christopher himself, and then our life growing up in Highwood. And then I'm going to end it by when I scattered his ashes in Piandelagotti, making it kind of a full circle. So if that's okay, you guys can ask any questions you want at any time of the presentation. I don't know how much time I had. Somebody told me I had 2 hours. 2 hours. Yeah.
No more than 8.
We got to leave at 2 o'clock. So I'd like to begin. And the first thing that I like to do is ask my sister to read the preface, just to give you a little bit more of a frame of reference. It's over there.
It was a good day. Christopher's cancer pain wasn't as acute, a welcome respite, so we decided to take the opportunity to get out of the house. We ended up at Sunset Park, a favorite location since he was a little boy, enjoying climbing the wooden rocket ship in the center of the kids' play area, calling down to me when he reached the top saying, "Look at me, Dad, I'm in space." Along with his younger brother Joe and sister Katie, we would come as a family to frolic in its spacious grounds to play tag and hide and go seek, and to watch numerous summer league softball games. By visiting so often, we cemented a loving relationship with the park that's lasted many years and now continues with visits that include the grandchildren. Once I secured Christopher in his wheelchair, we circled the park twice on a well-manicured wood chip path before settling alongside the baseball diamond. I locked the wheelchair brakes and took my place next to him on the lowest plank of the cold aluminum bleachers. Reaching into my coat pocket, I retrieved a Ziploc bag full of almonds and dried figs I had prepared. With my help, Christopher opened the bag at the closing seal, reached in, and began to eat. We sat in silence. He was staring up and to his right, as if something in the trees was grabbing his attention. I looked up behind me in that direction, but neither the oak tree's leafless branches nor the surrounding area yielded any clues. I saw no animals, the branches hung still, and people, if any, were far from our view. Perhaps he was pulled by some sort of sound carried by the wind, to which I was deaf. Perhaps he sensed a coming that made him look up. Or perhaps he looked toward the sky as he thought about his body's inability to fight the cancer. Whatever he saw, heard, or thought, he kept it to himself. When I touched his arm, he finally broke the silence. "Thanks, Dad, I've had enough," he said, as he handed the snack bag back to me. "You know, Dad, I loved Grandma and Grandpa, but it wasn't until my early 20s that I began to better understand them. When I was growing up, I remember wondering why they were so different than everyone else's grandparents. I'm ashamed to admit it now, but there was a time in my life that I felt awkward around them. Grandma and Grandpa acted Italian, and I wanted them to be American, to get a dishwasher and wear a t-shirt. I still regret ever feeling that way. And looking back, I see that I too felt the pressures of American assimilation, even 2 generations later. I am a unique American who's lucky to have grandparents so strong-willed, so courageous for making their immigration journey. I'm hoping that Sophia, as well as Joe and Katie's kids, one day will know all about their great-grandparents and how they brought the Lambertis to America. He stopped and looked away to scan the baseball diamond where the base bags still marked the ground at their proper locations, even though baseball season was long gone. He continued to gaze onto the field and began again. But here's where I need your help. You were part of the voyage. You know where the Lambertis came from. You intimately know Piandelagotti, and you experienced the American assimilation. I'm asking you to write down the Lamberti story. Tell our family what you know, what it felt like to leave Italy, to settle in Highwood, and what your life was like as an American while being so deeply rooted in the Italian culture. Please do this for me. Where I was ashamed early on, I couldn't be prouder about my Italian heritage now. I'm a Lamberti with a deeper understanding of what that means. Please tell the story. Chris, I'll do my best. Thank you, Dad. I'm cold. Can we go home now? When I write, I feel his presence. I know he's with me, inspiring me, gently guiding me forward when I feel tired or blocked. It must be Christopher because I've never been as prolific. In talking to a friend who also lost a child, I posed this very question. Do you truly think it's Christopher behind me, feeding me messages, striking up recollections, helping me fulfill my promise? Of course it is, he said emphatically. Christopher's simple request, now thousands of words, still stirs up thoughts of my Italian family and heritage, our journey, my parents' courage, their American dream realized, and the love between father and son.
Thanks, Ely. You know, one of the benefits is also a curse of being Italian, is I'm very emotional. And I can't make it through reading that. So, thank you, Eleonora. So, I began writing, and it just came. And I remember after he died, a couple of months after he died, I talked to a minister friend of mine and asked him, where do we go? Give me some information. Tell me he's okay. And he said, I have no idea. He says, I have no idea if there's a heaven or if we go or our consciousness continues on some way, somehow. He says, but I can tell you this, there's something out there in the ether, because I've experienced it myself. I hear stories about it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it feels like, but there's something there. Just be open to it. I took his word to heart. I'm open to it. And all of these words started to flow. My business background is sales and marketing. I wrote proposals. I wrote statements of work, contracts. But writing 70,000 words, I never thought I could do it. So the it, in this case, is my son, Christopher, who sits right here. And it just went crazy. So I started writing, and picked up, some articles were picked up by Paul at Franoi, and appeared in the written version for 3 months, and I've been writing for him the digital version now for a couple of years. So I started writing this book and the stories during the 8 months after Chris requested the deed, and it really helped me to keep present. I don't know if anybody's lost a child. It's terrible. You never get over it, of course, but writing helped me be present, forget about things. And after he passed in July of 2021. That's when I really started in earnest. I retired and just started writing and finishing this book. So that's brings me here. That it was published 4 weeks ago through Amazon, and it's doing very well. You know, this is the first of 5 presentations I'm going to give. First one. Don't know how's it going so far. Pretty good. So I'm excited about that. So let me start by talking about Piandelagotti and the reasons why my mom and dad immigrated to America. It was stories that my uncle and my dad and my mom would just talk about all the time when they got together as a group. The Piandelagotti, this small mountain town up in the Apennine Mountains, was the crown jewel of the region because of its altitude, because of its vistas, because of the coolness. People came up in the summer. You know, Modena and Parma, Bologna, Firenze, they're extremely hot in the summer and people just needed to escape. So they came up to this beautiful mountain village of Piandelagotti, and at that time, before the war, 5 functioning 5-star hotels because of the people traveling up the Piandelagotti. They had activities for tourists, just a number of things, and people had a great time, and the town flourished. Mainly it was a dairy farm community. People made their living through cows. The selling of cows, the milks, the butter, the cheese that they sold. We were on the side of the Apennine Mountains that was cooler. Just on the other side of the mountains was Tuscany that had better weather. So they grew kiwi, chestnuts, all the vegetables. And on our side, potatoes. It was colder, snow. And it was a thriving community. Up to 5,000 people. I equate it to Lake Geneva. You go to Lake Geneva in February, there's hardly anybody there, but in the summer it's like packed. So everything was going well until World War II. My father was drafted into the Italian army. So was his brother and his brother. So my dad and 2 uncles went into the Italian army. And it was devastating, obviously. Italy was in ruins, and Piandelagotti was in ruins as well. When they returned, and the reason for this was the Nazis made Piandelagotti their mountain headquarters. Make it even worse, they took over our house right in town, and that's where the generals stayed. They took everything out. On the first floor was my grandfather's woodworking shop. Out that went. In went their stuff. And because the Nazis were in Piandelagotti, there was a lot of Allied sorties, bombardments, and machine gun throughout the town. So it laid in ruin. And even though the Nazis, at least for half the war, we were allies with Germany, it was still like it was an oppression. It was very difficult time for the people that stayed behind in Piandelagotti. It was like they were in prison. In that area, there was a lot of partigiani, a lot of people against the Nazis. And the Nazis were keenly aware of this, so they kept a tight lid on everything. One of the stories in the book is when the Nazis heard tell of a group of boys, 14 and under, were passing secrets to the Allies. They went to hunt them down. So these 14 boys escaped in the woods. They knew the woods, the Nazis didn't. And so they hid under brush, leaves, trees and things as the Nazi patrol walked by them. Unfortunately, one of them sneezed and they made a run for it. And the Nazis cut him down. It was serious stuff. I remember my dad's brother, who was too young to be drafted, had to go to the woods, and lived in the woods for a long time because the Germans were drafting Italian military age kids to fight the war. So to make a long story short, he came back. All my uncles and my dad, thank goodness, came back from the war. One was in Greece, the other one was in Yugoslavia. My dad was in Sardinia. They came back in 1945, and the town was in ruins because of the bombardments, because of there's still bullet holes in the church, on the side of the church. You count them. So he came back to that, and there was a lot of work to reconstruct. My parents were married in 1947. I would venture to say that if it wasn't for the war, we'd be a little older now.
Please, well, my birth family, no.
Yeah, we're getting around 70 years from our immigration, man, oh man. So they got married in 1947, and there's in Italy, when you get married, you have the family, you do this, you do that, but at nighttime, they open up the reception to everybody. So the whole town is invited to dance and the festivities. So the only building that was large enough in Piandelagotti, the roof had been bombed. It was completely open. I'd say it's about as big from wall to wall. And so, can you believe the prayers that my mom and dad said? No rain, please, no rain. And it turned out to be a beautiful, beautiful night. And they danced away. So, Piandelagotti at that time was still okay. The government subsidized the farms, so they started getting back on their feet. The only issue is that my dad wasn't a farmer. My dad was a carpenter. My mom was a mom. She had 2 small children at the time. And though there was a lot of work to be done, there was very little money. So my dad and my mom sat down and said, what are we going to do? What's the choices? Well, the choices could have been going to Modena, maybe, Milano, Rome, someplace else. But Italy was in the same state. It was reconstructing. It was difficult. Maybe if my dad was a farmer and he knew what he was doing, that would have been okay, but that wasn't the case. So they sat down and made the difficult decision to come here to America. At the time, my aunt, my father's sister, lived in Highwood. In 1938, 39, I get all these dates confused. She married an American citizen. Therefore, she's an American citizen. And America threw their doors open in the 50s and invited immigration. And Italy certainly was a main contributor to the immigration. So she called for us. And so we were all set, and in 1955, we came over. And in my research, in my thinking about how it must have been back at that time, I came to the conclusion that my dad really wanted to come. He was a visionary. He knew what was going to happen, and he got a lot of good stuff from his sister. Come on over. Ton of opportunities in America. You have to do it for the kids. My mom never wanted to leave. Where my dad had a sister in Highwood, my mom's family all stayed over there because they were farmers. They were going to be okay. But my mom never wanted to leave. And she carried that burden until the day she died. Matter of fact, she died at 97, at age 97. And near the end, she was starting to lose it a little bit. You know, you'd find things in the freezer, and she'd say, well, you know, I'm just trying to see if I like it there. But one of the things she used to say to me and my sister when we were there, come on over here. What's the matter, Mom? She goes, I've been thinking about something. I go, yeah, what have you been thinking? I'm gonna go back to Italy.
Oh, wow.
And I go, Ma, you know, you're 97. It's a tough trip.
Yeah.
And by the way, everybody that you knew is dead. She goes, it's okay. I go to the cemetery, vado al cimitero, and visit all of them. She lived with that burden for all her life, though her sense of duty, her love for a family, her father, Sante Manatini, was in America, lived in Glencoe before World War I. As many young men at that time, they traveled the world, right, for work. A lot of people went to Corsica and Sardinia, cut down lumber. A lot of people ended up in Portland to work the timber. My paternal grandfather worked the tunnels. He was with a crew that made tunnels so the train could go through instead of around. Time is money, right? He was here. He had a little bit of a knowledge about Glencoe. And the war, World War I, called him back. And so he was instrumental in convincing my mother, you have to do it for the children. So she decided to come over here. I can't imagine that kind of decision. There's a love in here for them that'll never quit. So let me read some other things before we get into Highwood. A little bit more on Highwood. So we came over in 1955 and we settled into Highwood. And Highwood was really a soft landing. There was a ton of Italians from the Modenese region. 85% maybe? It was the Swedes, and then we kicked them out. And the Italians came in the town. And it was a soft landing because there are organizations, the Modenese, as Dominic said, individuals that were there for our benefit. My sister went to school. We got here on December 11th. I think you went to school that following Monday. But there was somebody there to guide us. What do you do about insurance? What do you do about this? What do you do about that? How about school? And so there was this one individual that helped my sister sign up, and I got a chance at least to hang around for 9 months before I started school. I remember distinctly you walking up the stairs in your pink
Snowsuit type thing.
yeah, those things, and go right into school. So there was organizations, there were individuals. Everybody spoke Italian. The stores, the grocery stores, were all Italians. We go in there and we speak Italian to them. So it was like being home. It was kind of cool. For my mother, that was very good. Though remember, she didn't want to be here anyway. But at least there was that. My dad had to go right out to the work world, which he did. He went to school to learn English. My mother didn't want to go to school. My dad learned to drive. My mom never wanted to drive. You know why? Because she was going to go back. I'm going back. You do what you want to do. I'm going to go back. And so we landed in Highwood, Illinois. Still a lot of Italians right there. So let me read about Highwood a little bit. I need some of these things. So there they are. As I grew up in Highwood, visiting my friends was like being in my own home. The same foods were served. I sat on the same style furnitures, you know, the ones with the plastic on it. And I saw pictures of relatives on their walls, posted in a fashion similar to mine at our home. The promotional calendars of the local Italian insurance firm hung right next to our pictures of the Pope in our kitchen. My friend's parents spoke broken English, Italo-Americano, with the same Italian accent as my parents. They imposed identical rules and doled out similar discipline. We all saw each other at Sunday Mass, after which the boys accompanied their fathers to the local coffee shop, while our mothers and sisters went back home to cook the Sunday family meal. The whole lot of us looked and acted alike. Our similarities even more pronounced because we Italians knew everybody else's business. The only wrinkle on this group was Fort Sheridan. Those of you who know the North Shore know that Fort Sheridan was right next to Highwood. The children from the fort joined us in school and in play. They provided a different look and a diverse way of doing, thinking, and living, which was kind of cool for us, just being all Italian, to really experience a diverse grouping. So that was very, very cool. And the things I refer to in the book, living in Highwood, are a couple of things. I remember Sundays. Sundays were so cool. You had the dinner. You had the Mass first, right? The 9 o'clock Mass. And my dad had to sit at the same pew, at the same, right inside the 4th pew on the right. That was all about him. So we went to Mass, St. James Parish in Highwood. Now back then, the place was packed. Now maybe 50 people, maybe. Everything changes, tutto cambiato. But after Mass, my sister and my mother would go, because the big meal was at 12 o'clock. And my dad and I would go uptown Highwood to a place called the Coffee Cup with a K. And there all the Italians gathered, all the men and their kids, sons, would gather at the Coffee Cup. I just remember it so cool, because when we neared the corner with Coffee Cup, I started hearing the murmuring, the Italian being spoken. And all of a sudden, as we round the corner, it was Lamberti, oh, Lamberti. And my dad would answer, and I would go in, and you go into the smoke-full cafeteria type of place. It was a drugstore. It sold magazines, newspapers, a little bit of everything. And you had to walk through the Sunday papers back at that time. Your stacks of Sunday paper, you walk through back to where they had the food, eggs and all that kind of stuff. And that's where all the men would get together and just pontificate about anything and everything. Does anybody know what a mora is? The mora? Sei, Dominic.
Yeah. Yes.
Cinque, seis. Oh, yeah, all of that. It's mora, la mora. Ancient Roman game. You try to guess how many fingers are going to be exposed with your partner. And if you guess right, you win, and you play the next person. And that's all you heard. Cinque, sei, sette, oh, and the smoke, they'd be smoking away. And that's...
Pierogies.
What?
Pierogies.
Pierogies.
No,
No, not pierogies. What was it? Pirodi. Okay. Pirodi.
Pirodi.
Pirodi cigars.
Oh,
the cigar.
you know what?
I said pierogies.
Oh.
Those thin cigars.
Polish.
Italian stogie.
I know.
You know what they sold, Dominic? White Owl cigars and Dutch Masters. If you
Oh, yeah?
remember those.
Okay. We're talking about Highwood.
Oh, Lamberti pt1. Oh, how are you?
I came to see you. I want to get one of your books.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Everybody know Luke?
Hello.
Just about.
You're not finished, right?
No,
No.
no.
Want to see?
Have a seat,
Thank you.
Plays golf with me. And I met him through the golf course
That's right.
in your organization.
Your buddy Jeff.
Yeah, yeah. So, I was just talking about the soft landing in Highwood. And one of my fondest memories was Sunday mornings. Going to mass, making it through that. I was an altar boy, of course, and I talked about being an altar boy. One of the humorous parts of the book. I had this one nun, you know, did you ever have a nun that just wouldn't let you alone?
Yes.
And so when it came time to communion, we had a rug with the railing, you know, and the priest would come down, and you, as a server, you had I even forgot what it was called.
Pat.
Flatten.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you just follow along and make sure nobody drops it, right? Well, when we got to that nun, I made sure my feet dragged on the rug, and I touched the middle on her chin.
See that?
No mess, no mess. So, Ron, you had a question?
Ross, and
Ron, Ross, I'm sorry.
I just was wondering, did the men at the Pancake House, did they allow the boys to smoke and have coffee?
A Boston style coffee, you know, a lot of cream with the coffee, no smoke in it. You didn't have to. It was in the air.
It was in cafe latte.
Mamma mia, yeah, yeah. And you know what? We're all friends. The kids were all friends. But for that particular occurrence, we sat with our fathers, and we give one of these. You know, hey, we'll talk to you during the week, type of thing, because it was really cool to be with your father.
They weren't on their phone.
Yeah, and I got
Yeah.
no phones, no, very loud,
Kidding.
very loud, smoky. I mean, I loved it.
Now the kids.
And my dad was a wonderful man, practical, smart, self-taught French, read Dante. His father was a stickler on education, but wasn't highly emotional. My mother, on the other hand, was highly emotional. She was disciplinarian. She'd wear those sandal type of things with no, and if I did something wrong, she had an arm on her, she'd take off her shoe and wing it to me. And I was paying attention. But my father wasn't as emotional. The ciabatta,
Yeah.
So what?
yeah.
Yeah, I've been-
The extent of his emotions is he'd stick out his finger on the way to the coffee cup, and I'd grab his finger. And I thought that was so cool. I thought that was so cool. So, that's in the book. I talk about Sundays, I talk about the Modenese. Here's all these Italians that get together on a quarterly basis, and they have this wonderful dance, and everybody's there. And as kids, what we really liked is to cut through the dance floor while they were dancing and see if we could make it on the other side. And so we'd go back and forth, and everybody had a wonderful time. And they also had an annual picnic that was somewhere up in Libertyville. And the same trio that played at the Modenese would play over there. Speed Karani and his trio, or something like that. Speed Karani. So when he started playing at the picnic, everybody, you know, it's like manna. It's like people going to church. Everybody would fall in there and they danced the night away. So it was pretty cool. So, but as I mentioned, my mother never wanted to come here. But because of her dad's advice, because of her sense of duty, her sense of love for the family, she came. And I never really understood that until the first time that we returned to Italy, which was in 1962. I was 10, my sister was 11, and it was our first return trip. My dad couldn't make it because he was working, so it was my sister, myself, and my mother who went over to Italy, returned for the first time. Let me read about that. Anybody need a break? Okay. We had purchased third-class tickets, which meant our cabin was right at the waterline. No windows. The cabin was small, but livable, including bunk beds, a toilet, and a sink. And by the way, my mother didn't want to fly. She was really scared of flying. And back then we could have, right? 9 hours instead of 9-10 days. But we didn't do it. I slept on the top bunk while my mother and sister shared the one below. When the sea was rough, and I remember 3 distinct days, it was awful. This big boat was being thrown all over the place. We ordered room service that consisted of boiled ham sandwiches with sliced tomatoes. To this day, I cannot eat a boiled ham sandwich. And they had a little container right on the side that hooks onto the bunk beds that you could throw up in. It was really pleasant. But my mother always prepared if we felt a stomach ache or any other ailment for that matter. My mother had cognac in an old Bear bottle. So the aspirin be done, she put in the cognac, and it was ready to dispense at any ailment. As we left the Atlantic Ocean, we entered the Mediterranean Sea. I thought this was pretty cool too. While we anchored at the Straits of Gibraltar, I witnessed merchants conducting business from small boats that surrounded our ship. They traded merchandise such as shoes, purses, scarves, belts, and other leather products for money by manually rotating ropes that bridged on the ship's railing and the merchants' skiffs. The ropes moved like pulleys similar to clotheslines above many streets in European cities. A colored clothespin moved both money and merchandise along the ropes, buyers and sellers shouting their offers until they bartered a deal. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
And I loved the trip. By the way, when my mother and dad said we're going back to Italy in '62, I was about it. And when they told me it's going to be 3 months living in my mom's farmhouse, I said, I've been here for 7 years. I started to assimilate, right? I started playing baseball. People liked me. I was good at baseball. You know, I don't want to go. There's a whole summer of playing baseball that was going to be lost. And everybody knows what an Italian mother is like. She takes it for first, maybe the second, maybe the third, but after that it's like, we're going, shut up, I don't want to hear about it anymore, and we're going. But I remember that distinctly. And I love baseball, so figuring that I needed to spend 3 months over there, what was I going to do? I cut out baseball players from magazines that I had, and I created a game with dice. So, you know, an ace is a home run, a 3 is a triple, all that kind of stuff, just to keep myself occupied. So that's what I did. But I really started to understand where my mother was coming from when the ship, the Leonardo da Vinci, pulled in to Genoa. Aspetta. We arrived in the principal Italian port of Genoa at 9 a.m. on June 4th. The ship slowly and gently docked to a complete stop. People gathered on the landing along the port side of the ship. Several rows deep, shading their eyes, all straining to catch a glimpse of their arriving loved ones. Passengers up on the ship's deck, including myself, my sister, and my mother, scoured the crowd themselves, looking for familiar faces. There, my mother explained. There is Papa and Guido. She began. This is another part. She began to wave enthusiastically. enthusiastically with shouts of "Papa, Papa." We had left 7 years ago, so I had faint memories of both my grandfather and uncle, but recognized them from the many pictures my mother had showed me. "Yes, I see them," yelled my sister with similar gusto. My grandfather drew attention to himself, madly waving his signature cap back and forth over his head. My mother kept repeating, "Grazie Dio, grazie Dio." She couldn't stop crying and waving. "Papa, Papa." She held her shaking hands in front of her face before dropping them to bring my sister and I closer to her. Today, as I reflect on that moment, my mother saw her father again, I realize that I didn't comprehend the magnitude of what their reunion meant for her well-being and her spirit. She had reluctantly departed from Italy to immigrate, a decision she never truly wanted but understood was necessary. Now returning, she would be able to hug her mother, father and sisters, and relatives and friends again. The landing produced a depth of emotion that gripped her whole body and spirit that manifests itself by her shaking, staccato-like voice. Does anybody need a break? No, we're good? Really? You need a break? I know your birthday.
That's it, I need a tissue.
You need a tissue.
Yeah.
So that was the trip back. The first one. The first day I played my game of baseball. The second day, my aunt comes to me, who lived with my grandfather and grandmother on the farm, and said, "Do you want to go after the cows?" Do I have to? You know? And my mother encouraged it. And so that day, and every other day of those 3 months, I went after the cows with my aunt. Now, my mom's family consists of sisters. And so the youngest aunt, Lena, she was kind of like the man that my grandfather never had. So she really, really helped around the farm. And every morning, we let out the cows, and in the morning we would go down the hill over here. The afternoon we go down the hill over there, all culminating at the Fiume, at the river where the cows can drink. And I tell you, that was the best summer ever. Every day. And my aunt was an entertainer. She'd make up languages. We'd have our spots that she would call the hotel. And we'd sit there and have our lunch, which is basically cheese and bread wrapped up in some sort of cloth. And I loved it, going after the cows. I didn't think about baseball at all. Not at all.
So your game lasted one day?
One day, that's it. I threw the dice, and my grandfather and grandmother were looking at me, what goes a fa here, you know, rolling the dice in their concrete floors. But that was it. That was it. When we were ready to come back that beautiful summer, my aunt, unbeknown to me, had carved figurines made out of wood that she found and branches that she made in the images of the cows that we went after. And she said to me, she said, "You know, I know you brought your baseball when you came. Take these and bring them back home, so when you look at them, you'll think of us." Unfortunately, they were long lost. She did a wonderful job with the horns, and they had a sheep, you know, that came along and sort of followed the cows, and she had a beautiful rendition of the pecoraro. So, and my sister enjoyed it as well.
Did you have to milk the cows?
I didn't. Yeah, but they did, and of course, the old, "Come on here, come closer," and they'd squirt us, and my aunt would squirt us. I tried once.
Yeah, we tried a couple of times.
Yeah.
And then tasting the milk.
Oh, no.
I still have a memory of that.
The carvings,
Yeah.
the carvings of the cows disappear with the baseball cards.
Yeah.
Now everybody doesn't know where their baseball cards
Right,
are.
Yeah.
Same.
And you know, and you think about it back then, it was a farm. No showers, you know. For the water, we had to walk to a certain place where you get the water and you boil it for things that you need. A bath. The bathroom was the stall. What do you call those little things at night where you, the little pan thing?
English,
Chamber
yes,
Okay.
chamber pots.
You know, like.
That was before they built their bathroom,
that-
yeah.
Before they built a bathroom, and you get there and you go, seriously? You got all forgotten. It was just a normal thing. It was just love, unconditional love. It was just family, and growing up on a farm. You need a chicken? You want to cook a chicken today? Yeah, that sounds good. You don't go to the grocery store. You pull the thing. My sister to this day does not eat rabbit because she made them her pets. And my grandmother, we're gonna have conillo, Archie. And out she goes and picks one, and things moving around, has a club, boom! My sister, basta. No more. No more. So, all told, my sister and I have returned 15, 20-ish times. But I only talk about 2 more times that I returned. And as a family, we returned with my dad in 1969. So this is 14 years after we left. And the cool part is that I didn't care about the cows too much at 18 years old. I discovered that Italian girls were really, really pretty. So my aunt could go after the cows. I'm sure that she'd do a good job. And what's cool about it is that Piandelagotti changed as I grew. So it took on a different face. I got to meet people my age that didn't play baseball, that didn't go to movies, but they had this wonderful life. They'd help their parents. They would have fun as kids. The big thing in our entertainment world was to go out in Campania, where we had this place that we would all meet and have campfires and just talk. No phones, and we just talk. And they would tell me stories about the town, the people in the town. And once again, I had a great time in Piandelagotti. My sister had a great time as well. She went dancing all over the place because that was the main thing to do for kids. You dance in Piandelagotti, you go 20 kilometers over and dance in Pieve and dance over here and dance over here. And we just had a tremendous time. And the next story I talk about in the book in my return to Italy is when I brought my 3 kids, Christopher, Joey, and Katie, back to Italy. Really wanted to do that. We did that the year after 9/11, so it was 2002. I know I'm too far away, but I'll show you a scar where my daughter, afraid of flying, plus, X amount of months after 9/11, that she just never let go. She dug her nails into me. I was like, oh man, this is not good. But again, even at that time, different meaning. Piandelagotti faced me with another unique experience, and a proud father walking around Piandelagotti introducing my children to my aunts and uncles and cousins that were there. And again, really completing the circle. Seeing my daughter, who's about 5 feet, and my aunt, who's about 4 feet 11, just hugging each other and taking their pictures. And my aunt waited for us. She died 4 months after we were there. And they experienced a great time in Italy as well. So that's in the book. And I'll save the last time I went to Italy with my sister a couple years ago to the end. But here we are in Highwood, and we're afforded all these wonderful opportunities. My dad was a carpenter, and he started working at Fort Sheridan. A lot of Italians worked at Fort Sheridan because they had a need for everything: maintenance people, landscapers, laundry. Oh, the Fifth Army was in Highwood at the time, so it was a lot of people there. By the way, Highwood was the only wet community between Chicago and Waukegan. Everybody else is dry. So you could imagine the Saturday nights when the Army guys came from Fort Sheridan and the Navy guys who were at Great Lakes, a little bit north, they all met in Highwood. There was never a dull moment in Highwood. So my dad worked there for a while. My aunt had gotten him a job at Fort Sheridan, but then he went out and constructed and worked construction. The subdivisions were coming. Back then in the 50s, everybody was getting out of the city. So a lot of subdivision, a lot of homes being built around the Highwood area. And my dad was a laborer, a carpenter, working on those homes. But it wasn't good enough. It wasn't a steady income because you were a servant to the weather. So if it was bad weather, you didn't work. And we needed money. We needed to repay a lot of people that gave us money to come here to America. And so he went to work for a factory where he worked for a lot of years, 27 years, and retired from that factory at age 65. They gave him a golden hammer. Because he was the carpenter for the factory as well. My mother cleaned houses. She ironed people's clothes in Lake Forest, the white shirts. And that's how they made money. I went to Carmel High School. My sister went to Highland Park High School. I was lucky enough to win the Evans Scholarship to Marquette University, which is basically, they paid my way for 4 years. I was a caddy and was on the top third of my class, and they paid 4 years at Marquette. So a tremendous amount of opportunities that America had to offer that Piandelagotti simply couldn't. Now who knows if we would have still been in Piandelagotti at this time? You just don't know. But again, 1 foot squarely in the American culture, it was fantastic, without losing the history of being an Italian. So I have those stories in there. I also have stories about Christopher and his struggle with glioblastoma, the worst brain cancer you can get. He lived for 18 months after the initial diagnosis. Of course, we all thought that he could beat it, and we did everything that we could to help him, but of course, it was terminal. So, since I introduced him in the preface and talked about him in the beginning of the book, I thought the reader needed to have more information on Christopher. So there's stories about Chris in there. There's the last chapter is when my sister and I returned to Italy 2022. That's the last chapter, but there's 4 addendums to the book, and they speak to the people who stayed behind. My grandfathers, my grandmothers, and my aunts and uncles, wondering how their life had gone. You know, I think if all the trips that we were over there when they were still alive, I think if you put all those days together, it's about 30 days maybe I had with my grandparents before they died. My paternal grandfather died 4 months after I was born, so I never knew him. But I needed to know more. You know, I'm a grandfather myself. I see him all the time. So I get to communicate. I get to understand what's going on. I didn't with my grandparents. So that's in the book too. The last chapter is when my sister and I go back. And the purpose was to visit Piandelagotti. And the second purpose of the trip was to scatter some of the ashes, Christopher's ashes, in Piandelagotti. So what we found was a dying town. Now there's 300 people. The dairy farms have long gone. And the trades have long gone. You don't need more than one carpenter in town. And all the young people have left to go to the cities. There's nothing left really for them. And so when the older people die, that's it. So, and of course Italians and other people that travel for vacations have many, many other options. They have now air conditioning down in their houses in Florence and Modena. They don't need to escape the heat up to Piandelagotti where it's nice and cool. So tourism has really gone down. There's some expats like us that go back. We still have our house. So anybody wants to visit Piandelagotti, let us know. It does have plumbing. It does have a shower. 2 bedrooms, nice kitchen. So let us know. We'll set you up. Casa Italia rate. So that kind of disappointed us. But you know what? The mountains were still there. There's our house, right next to the church. That's where we were born. So there's a special something about it. Now, I don't care if there's 2 people there. We'll continue to go back. The other reason was to scatter Chris's ashes. And as I mentioned, he had such an interest. And when he came back, when he went in 2002, he loved the place. He loved the history, he loved the people. Everybody loved him. And I wanted to pick a couple of special places. And this is the end, by the way, and I'll let you guys could ask questions and things. And I'll sign any book that anybody wants. There's a couple of places I picked. When we were back in 2002, one of the things to do in Piandelagotti in the fall is to go after porcini mushrooms. Anybody ever have porcinis?
Yeah.
They're the best, no? Migliore. Any way you want them. Fried, in sauce, I mean. And again, it's a simple thing. You go out in the woods and you find them. It's the hunt. It's the gathering. So one morning we were down at my aunt's farm, and Joseph and Christopher, Joey's my other son, myself and my cousin's husband went into the woods, the deep woods, to find these porcini. We were kind of snookered, but we found some. But Christopher found one that was huge, that could feed us. And he was so happy, so ecstatic. And of course, it's like fishing, right? When you get back to start talking to people, the mushroom got bigger and bigger. So I definitely wanted to scatter his ashes where he had found that mushroom. And for whatever reason, my cousin's husband marked it with a flag. So he knew exactly where it was. So I was excited about that. And the other place that I wanted to scatter his ashes, my dad lived in a valley that he had to walk up a hill, a mountainside, to go over the mountainside, down the other side to reach my mom's house. So it was a young Franco who would walk up the mountain, and there's a spot that overlooks his house that's down in the valley, continue down the path to Giovannina's house, and go courting, sit and talk to her and things like that. I thought it'd be kind of special if I scattered his ashes right at the top of that mountain, right on that path, so he could walk with a young Franco as he walked to a young Giovannina's house that eventually would be his grandmother and grandfather. So. I know we all die. It is as sure as the Piandelagotti Mountains exist. We die in battle, we die in sickness, we die because we're at the wrong place at the wrong time. We die at the hands of somebody else's rage. We die in sacrifice. We die in our sleep. We die so the young can be born to walk the earth, and eventually this earth claims us all. But I never thought that I would be there that day, laying my son's ashes on that ground. I had always imagined more opportunities to be together with him in Piandelagotti. Yet we command nothing, death especially, no matter how much we try to cheat it. We can control, however, with great gusto, how hard we love, and how much and how often we express that love. We can control the good we do. Piandelagotti, no matter how much it declines, will remain hollow ground for me as long as I can physically travel back to Italy. And when I die, my son Joe and my daughter Katie, or one of my grandchildren will return my ashes to that very same ground. It must be this way. This is the edict for my parents, my ancestors, and now Christopher are rooted there. Thank you for your attention.